Hello, I'm Wade Appleby, one of the sales engineers with Panda Security. Today we'll be taking a look at Adaptive Defense 360 on the Ether platform.
This demo is being performed on an iPad to show the flexibility and ease of use of our platform from mobile devices all the way to desktop devices, allowing you to manage your environment from the comfort of your office, home, or on the go.
Adaptive Defense 360 works by sending the telemetry and metadata of every executable and process collected by the simple-to-deploy agent to our cloud environment, where we then use a combination of machine learning algorithms and a neural network to predict and then classify the behavior as either goodware or badware. These classifications are then stored in what we call the collective intelligence that then benefit our entire user base, from our base endpoint protection customers all the way to other Adaptive Defense 360 customers. The second piece of the EDR functionality is our anti-exploit agent, which is used to block both known and unknown exploits from being utilized within the environment. And then to wrap up the EDR functionality, all customers have our threat hunting services, which are looking for symptoms of advanced persistent threats that are targeting their environments over prolonged periods that could potentially be coming from hacking groups or even nation-state actors. This is then backed by the underlying endpoint protection platform functionality, which covers basic AV to capture the known bads, web content filtering, device control, and then firewall with intrusion detection and prevention. We also provide additional modules that we will be going over, including full patch management, disk encryption through BitLocker management, and advanced reporting of all the telemetry and metadata that the agents collect through either the advanced visualization tool or through the full data analytics platform if you want to ingest network and firewall logs to visualize all information throughout your entire environment. The first thing that we're going to be taking a look at today are the separate dashboards within the platform. The Ether platform separates the dashboards depending upon the functionality, from the security dashboard to the web content dashboard. Then, if you have the individual modules of patch management and encryption, a licensing dashboard, the executive report for high-level reporting, and then for more low-level reporting, my lists, which allows you to get granular and generate spreadsheets based off of underlying detail that you want to visualize. The security dashboard lets us see from a protection status standpoint what computers are offline, have outdated protection, lets us see the programs that have been allowed by you as an administrator. Then we get down into the classification of all the programs that have been run and scanned. So you can see if they've been classified as a malware, as an exploit, as a PUP, a potential wanted program, or if they've been considered trusted. Then as we come down further, we can actually see the activity. So we can see how many incidents from both PUPs, exploits, and malware. And then for the PUPs and malware, we can see if they've ran, if they've accessed data, or if they've made external connections. As we come down further, we can see the currently blocked programs being classified. This will result depending upon the behavioral mode that Adaptive Defense 360 is in, and I will get further into that detail a little bit further along within the demo. And then as we come down near the bottom, we can see the basic AV detections, and then underneath that we can see any detections that are coming from the web AV, the firewall, devices being blocked, dangerous actions, tracking cookies, malware URLs that have been blocked, and then all the way down at the bottom we have additional settings if you install the agent on an Exchange server for content filtering, and as we'll see under the web content filtering, for spam filtering as well. But what I wanted to do was take a look at a detection and show you just how powerful the platform can be. So with the malware activity, obviously we can see that some have run, some have accessed data, some have made external connections, and this is good high-level information. However, depending upon the size of the environment, the personnel that are working within the solution, you're going to need more detail. So let's take a look at a malware activity within this current environment. So as we can see a variety of different types of malware that have not executed, that have been blocked, that have been deleted, and that have not run, accessed data, or made external connections. However, we can see one right down here. This one is a perfect example. If we take a look at the path, we can see it actually looks like what could be a video. To the average person, they're going to see this file, see that it says Neil Armstrong transmission original 1969 Apollo 11 mp4.exe, and they're just going to assume it's a video file that they can click and that they can play. It's trying to be as interesting as possible to get the average person to click on it. But, of course, to anyone that's computer literate, which is surprisingly only 10% of the population, we can see that this is a double extension, and therefore it's most likely malicious. Now obviously Adaptive Defense 360 has classified it as bad. We can see that it ran, it made external connections, it did not access data however. So I want to drill down and get a little bit more information about what it was attempting to do within this environment. So as we can see, the forensic information is still high level. We can see the affected computer, the logged in user, the detection path. Then we can see the threat impact. So we can see it's been considered a Trojan /ci.a. This means it's a new threat and it's been added to that collective intelligence. We can then go compare to look on Google or on VirusTotal, because Panda is not the only EDR vendor out there. We're not the only AV provider out there. We're not always going to be the first to see something. So being able to compare and contrast and see exactly just how things are being classified makes you more secure. Then we can see the activity, the detection date, and the dwell time. How long from the first time Panda saw it until it was classified as badware. With Adaptive Defense 360, the underlying classification takes roughly 5 to 15 minutes if it's being handled by the machine learning within the neural network. If the machine learning and the neural network cannot make the determination if it's good or not, we will then send it up to our team of forensic experts that then do hand classification. That can take up to 24 hours, but for the vast bulk, 99.98% to be specific, will be done within the 5 to 15 minute mark. Then as we come down further, we can see the infection source. Now, if there is an infection coming from within the network, we will be able to show you the computer, the IP address, and if there's a user logged in, of course, the user. We can also see occurrences in other computers. So we can see that it's kind of intelligent. It's renaming itself. 9/11 inside plane recovered video, Scarlett Johansson video. It's trying to make itself as attractive as possible to get other users to click on it. Now this is still really good detail, but this is not the deep forensic information that I myself want to be able to see. I want to drill down, get to the lower levels, and see exactly what it was attempting to do. So that's where we come into the full activity details. So I click on the full activity details, and it's going to show me the entire life cycle of this piece of malware, from when it creates its registry keys to run, to when it communicates over the network, to when it loads its library and runs its malicious executables. Now, as we can see, when taking a look at this, we can see where it says unknown, where it says no, where it says yes on some of these. That determination is based upon if it has a trusted signature and if we consider it something that we have already seen before. So we know that that library, those executables, we have not seen that before. It's not trusted, but as I scroll down, we can actually see it ran explorer.exe and chrome.exe. So it has run some known good executables over its life cycle. Now this is very granular information. This is great detail for someone that has a security background. However, not everyone that's going to be utilizing the solution will have that security background, and they need to be able to learn and educate themselves on what was happening, how it was happening across their environment, and being able to actually visualize that, as most of humans are visual learners. And that's where the activity graph comes into play. This activity graph will allow us to visualize absolutely every single piece of information from this piece of malware across its entire life cycle. It allows us to actually visualize it and watch it happen over that 15-minute period. Now, it's not happening in real time. Wouldn't expect anyone to sit and stare at the screen for 15 minutes. It is sped up. So as we can see every single executable, every single registry key edit. We actually even show, if you take a look, we show the country, the city, and the X and Y coordinates of the outbound connections. So we can see if they're connected to command and control servers, say in Russia or China or other parts of Eastern Europe, and we can pretty much assume, yep, that's probably malicious. Now we can see that this has done a lot of stuff over the life cycle, and this is after everything that has happened. I want to watch this happen. So down here under the timeline, I'm able to rewind the time all the way to the beginning and then watch it happen. So I click on start. As we can see, creates the registry keys, receives data, loads the library, runs the processes, makes those outbound connections, and then tries to propagate along the network. And as we can see, there are no other tendrils coming off any of the other endpoints that it tried to propagate to because it was blocked from executing. This computer was already infected before Adaptive Defense 360 was installed on it. Adaptive Defense 360 was installed, was placed in hardening mode, so therefore anything that was pre-existing on the endpoint was allowed to run. As soon as the classification came through for this piece of malware, it was blocked from executing and then removed from the computer and removed across the environment to assure that there was no possible way it could execute whatsoever throughout the rest of the environment. Now, I did just mention one of those modes, hardening mode. The three modes of Audit, Hardening, and Lock Mode will change the functionality of the classification. We initially deploy within Hardening Mode because we will allow anything that's pre-existing on the endpoint to run. Therefore, if a company has proprietary software that we've never seen before, we want to make sure it's able to execute and not be impacted by us until after it's been classified. This will then allow us to after a 2-week period, shift into what we call lock mode. Within lock mode, anything that is unknown will be prevented from executing whatsoever, no matter where it's coming from. If it's coming from the internet, an external storage device, or if it's pre-existing on the endpoint. This is where we want all customers to be after a 2-week period to assure that there is absolutely no possible chance for anything that is unknown coming from an external storage device, coming from the internet, or coming from the machine itself able to execute within that environment. Then we have Audit Mode, which is going to be used mostly for testing purposes. The anti-exploit also has 2 modes as well, both Audit and Block. Very similar. We want to place the initial deployment within Audit Mode for at least 2 weeks and then shift into Block Mode to make sure we can not block any applications that are potentially compromised initially when we deploy within a new environment. So that covers the more low detail of the EDR functionality, and let's take a look at some of the other functionality that comes from the Endpoint Protection Plus side of things. The web content filtering and spam. So the dashboard is going to give us an overview of all of the categories that have been accessed. It'll also show us what are the top 10 most accessed categories overall, individually, and then the most blocked categories overall and individually if you set up any category-based blocks or if you set up any URL-based blocks as well. And then down at the bottom we can see spam detected on the Exchange servers. Again, as I mentioned earlier, if you have Exchange servers, we have some special functionality for those around spam, content filtering, and just some more underlying AV detection within those emails. Now, as I mentioned earlier, all of the detail that's within the platform you're able to drill down into and get deeper underlying and understanding of that information. So if I wanted to go see who's been attempting to access illegal drug websites, I can click on this, it'll drill down, it'll show me all the machines. I can also filter from here, and then I can export this detail to have as a spreadsheet report. You are able to export any detail you want off the platform, no matter where it's located, filter it down however you see fit to visualize that information. That then brings us to the Patch Management module. The Patch Management module is a separate module that covers full Windows and third-party patching. It also gives you the ability to do patch rollback and to give some information around things like end-of-life programs, letting you know what programs are currently in end-of-life, are approaching end-of-life, or have known end-of-life dates. Again, the name of the game when it comes to patch management, just like the rest of the platform, is scalability. It makes it extremely simple for the small environments to get patches deployed out, very straightforward, by group, by computer, where the larger environments that might have dedicated patching environments want to look for the specific CVEs that want to push out based on an individual patch basis. The Patch Management module allows you to do that. So as we can see available patches, last patch installation tasks. So I want to drill down and take a look. So I can see these available patches, I can see the group, the program, the version, what the patch is, what the criticality is. I can filter based off of this. I can export this detail. So let's just take a look at one of these real quick. This Net Framework 4.7. I drill down, it shows me if there are any CVEs associated with it, as I can see that there are 2. Then it gives me the patch details. So we can see the underlying patch details, that it says that it revolves a security feature bypass vulnerability that exists when Net Framework and Net Core components do not completely validate certificates. This security update addresses the vulnerability by helping to make sure that the Net Framework and Net Core components completely validate those certificates. So I could have seen this patch, I can now push this out on an individual basis, or if I'm that smaller customer, I can come into my computer groups and push out patches based upon the criticality. So when I click on Install Patch, I can install it directly to this individual machine, install it on all computers, or as I just mentioned, I can come into my organizational view and push it based out upon those organizations. So as I can see right here, my workstation group, I can come in, schedule a patch installation, and then choose the criticality of the patches, how I want to push it out, what options happen if the computer is offline, and if I want to restart the computers once the patches conclude. So I can choose based upon my groups. This group, they will be force rebooted. This group, they complain about reboots. They're not going to be force rebooted. As I mentioned, the patch management allows for full Windows patching, full third-party patching, and the ability to do patch rollback. As we are all aware, especially with Windows 10, we've seen a variety of patches that can potentially cause blue screens, and being able to roll those back are extremely important from a business perspective. That then brings us to the encryption module. The encryption module is very straightforward. It's a BitLocker management module that allows you to handle all of the devices that you need to encrypt across your entire environment with enforcement settings through BitLocker. So the Encryption Dashboard is going to show us from a status perspective if they have it, how they support it, how they're encrypted, and what authentication method is applied. Now again, all this I can drill down into, so I can go see only the encrypted disks, come back, maybe visualize which ones are using a security processor and a password or just a processor. And from a settings perspective, it's very simple and straightforward. So I come down to the data protection section, into the encryption section, and I can make sure that all hard disks are encrypted, force password and passphrase access, if I don't want to encrypt ones that require a USB drive, or if I only want to encrypt only use space. And then for management of keys, very straightforward. I come into my Workstations group, I choose one of our machines, I come down into the details, and as I scroll down, I can get the recovery key, and there I'm able to easily access the recovery key for people that forget their passwords and need to gain access to their machines, so we can reset their passwords if they're being managed by BitLocker. That then brings us to licensing. One of the benefits of Adaptive Defense 360 is our licensing is a single pool. It does not matter based upon the OS, based upon the device. It covers Windows, Mac, Linux, Android, and shortly iOS as well from an anti-theft perspective. That then brings us to the executive report. The executive report allows us to get some high-level detail around all the information across the platform, and this will depend on if you have the patch management module as well. As you can see under the content, available patches, and from a licensing perspective, it'll let you know what computers support patch management and what do not. So let's take a look real quick at this. I've generated it for the last month, so this will take a minute to generate, and this will show us all of the high-level detail that we saw within the dashboards alongside some more information that will be extremely valuable to us as an admin. Things like the licensing status, network security status, patch management status, the classifications. Then we get down into things like who are the problem users within the environment. We can see top 10 computers with most detections, the malware, pup, and exploit activity, the latest malware detections, the latest pup detections, latest exploits, AV detections, Exchange server content filtering, and then the web content filtering, and spam. And then down at the bottom, what are the computers with the most available patches, and what are the top 10 most critical patches. Then that brings us to the more low-level reporting of My Lists. My Lists allows you to generate some very detailed lists on any part of the platform, from software to the hardware information that we're pulling off the machines, security status, patch management, web content filtering, and then of course the encryption status. Now when I click into these, malware and pup activity, I can choose my filters if I want to choose the type, if they ran, the dates, the action, if they access data, if they made external connections, filter all this information down, and then as you can see, if I click on the three dots over here on the right hand side, I can export it or export the list in details. These get then saved over here under the My List dashboard, where I can choose as many as I want, create very custom filters to visualize that information that I want to just turn into a nice, easy to read spreadsheet format. That then brings us back over to the organizational structure. As I mentioned, the agent is very simple to deploy. From the computers menu, you can set up your organizational structure based upon a complex hierarchical tree, or you can ingest it based upon Active Directory. When it comes to deployment, we have a variety of options. Over here in the top right, I can click on Add Computers. I can, of course, just choose the OS, take the installer, or have it emailed to the end user so they can install it themselves. Or you can utilize the discovery and remote installation functionality that is built into our platform. The way that discovery and remote installation works, the first computer that you install with Panda will be considered a discovery computer. There are no resource requirements. All it does is once a day, it uses the agent to ping the other computers on the network to see if they have Panda on them. It then reports those computers back within the dashboard and then allows you to push out the agent to those computers that have reported back that they do not have Panda on them. If you have multiple subnets, it's as simple as just specifying a computer on each subnet. It can be any person's computer, again, as there are no extra resource requirements. So as you can see, I can select the discovery computers, I can configure them to choose the subnets, to choose when they check, and then back on the status dashboard, I can create a list that says I want to see all the unmanaged computers that have been discovered, and then I can say, all right, check all the unmanaged ones, and then I want to be able to deploy these out. So I can see I can install the Panda agent, and it gives me the option to install it, add it to a specific group where it will inherit all the settings of that group, or push it based into its Active Directory path, as you can see right here. You can also handle uninstallation from this menu as well. So I come into the Workstations folder. Let's say I'm replacing a couple of machines. I select Windows Desktop 11 and 12. And up here, I have the ability to select the trash can and then choose the option to uninstall the Panda agent. So it makes both installation through remote installation and remote uninstallation a very simple process and easy to manage within the console. Alongside that, I have a wide variety of other functionality within here. I can reboot machines, I can force patches to these individual machines, and a core piece of functionality to Adaptive Defense 360, which can be applied to individual machines or to entire groups, is the ability to isolate those machines. The isolate functionality will sever all network connections between all applications, both outbound, inbound, and only have the connection that between us and that endpoint. You can then whitelist any processes as well, as you can see when I click on Advanced Options. So if you have any remoting solutions, any other applications that you need to be able to operate that require a network connection, you can whitelist those processes. So this would be very beneficial in a scenario where you're concerned about potentially someone that should not have access to a machine having access, or potentially to a machine that is compromised through a non-malware, non-exploit based attack that could be coming from just as simple as they gain credentials from social hijacking, stealing the passwords of an end user, or potentially from a disgruntled user on the inside, from an insider threat perspective, locking down their machine to make sure that they cannot exfiltrate any data out or infiltrate any data in. As you can see as well, there are a variety of other options, from viewing patches to scheduling patching installation to adjusting the settings of these individual groups within here. One of the big benefits to our solution is that we provide profiles for each piece, which allow you to get very granular with the groups and have nested groups within nested groups within nested groups, all with their own profiles and settings. Makes it very easy to say this profile is going to get applied to 5 groups. However, one of the groups underneath that is going to have a different profile for the per computer settings, as the anti-tampering needs to be disabled. And as you can see, it's very easy to come in and adjust this. You just click in, choose how you want to adjust it, and then when I come back into that, I can now see where it's being inherited from and if I want to inherit it from the parent group within this profile. Up here to the left of the organizational view is another very core piece of functionality with the platform, which are filters. Now, filters allow us to visualize the information that we wouldn't logically put together from an organizational based perspective. Maybe I have old machines that have a certain piece of software and they're spread across different groups. I still need to be able to visualize that information, and that's where filters come into play. So these are all pre-baked filters that come out of the box, from OS to system type to hardware to software, and then you can craft your own custom filters. So as an example, let's say I want to create a filter that's based off of both hardware and software. So I click on Add Filter, and then I select my category. So I'm going to select hardware, and let's say I'm looking for old machines that have 2 core CPUs. So I set it equal to, I set the value to 2. I do a conditional AND statement, so I can do AND or statements, and then I say software and base it upon the name and say it's equal to whatever blank software it is. I then add this in as a filter, and I'll be able to visualize all of the computers and machines that fit this very specific filter. So you can do very in-depth filters with tons of AND statements, lots of OR statements to really visualize the information that you care about, and then of course you can export this detail into a spreadsheet format to visualize that information that you normally wouldn't group together. That then brings us to the settings. So as I mentioned, the underlying functionality of the settings within the Ether platform is all profile based. So as you can see, you have per computer settings, network services, security for workstations, servers, Android devices, patch management, and then the encryption settings. From a user perspective, we allow very granular control over who has access to what and what they're able to do within the platform through our custom roles. So you can see you can choose the individual groups and the individual permissions that they have access to. So you can create very granular, restricted profiles for potentially, say, you bring on an intern that shouldn't be able to adjust anything but needs to be able to visualize the data within the console. Then you're able to track all activity of all users and admins of the console from a security perspective to see exactly what they're doing, if they're pushing out patches, if they're adjusting security settings, if they're allowing threats. And as you can see, there are a wide variety of actions that were taken by me over the past couple hours. So I can see those sessions, see those actions, and export this detail. So I have this from both a security perspective and also from an auditing perspective. The per computer settings covers updates and anti-tampering. So you can choose potentially if there are machines that won't always reach the internet, that should only have updates at certain hours, and then also to make sure that both users and malware cannot stop the services and cannot uninstall the solution. It also gives you the ability to, as you can see, log in locally to the agent and turn on or turn off parts of the protection. Then network settings, very straightforward, covers proxy and the language. Network services, so this covers the proxy if you have machines that are sneaker netted across the environment, that are air-gapped, that don't have an internet connection, that need to speak through a central machine. You can also set up a cache for updates, for patches, for the installers, and this is where you can also configure the discovery computers that I mentioned earlier. We of course offer support for VDI for both non-persistent and persistent environments. That then brings us to alerts. Alerts are very straightforward. You're able to specify the individual alerts that you want. Anything with an informational bubble, such as these four, you will get a summary alert every 15 minutes for all of the previous alerts that were generated. Because some of these alerts, you could potentially get tens, hundreds of alerts over a short period of time. You obviously don't have to deal with that much information coming in on an individual basis. So being able to show a summary alert makes it much easier to digest that information within your email. That then brings us to workstations and server settings. From here, this is where we can adjust the behavior, add in exclusions, adjust the antivirus. So you can see we can adjust the modes from audit, hardening to lock. We can choose, how we want the reporting to be set up. As you can see, anti-exploit, the same. AV, file, email, web browsing AV, what types of threats to detect, what types of file types to scan. The firewall, so you can ingest any predefined rules that you might have within your firewall device, as the firewall protection will work once they're off the network and no longer protected by the firewall device. Our firewall will pick up the rules that you have, and then of course block any of the intrusions and detect upon any of the intrusions that you specify within here. Then device control, so you're able to set up the read-write access of both removable storage devices, CD/DVD drives, Bluetooth devices, mobile devices, imaging devices, and modems. Web content filtering, you're able to choose based upon the day and hour, and of course based upon all the categories that we provide within here, and then set up any blacklisting or whitelisting that you want to do within the web content filtering. And then down at the bottom we have settings for the AV, for Exchange servers, the anti-spam for Exchange servers, and then the content filtering for those Exchange servers as well. And then Android devices, which will cover iOS very shortly as well, from both the anti-theft and from an antivirus perspective. And then patch management, which covers how often we search for patches, the types of patches that we want to search for, and if we want to disable the Windows Update on the computers to make sure Panda is handling all the updating, all the patching across all facets of your environment, from the Windows to the third-party patching. And then, as we saw previously, the encryption settings, which covers to make sure that encryption is enforced across the entire environment, and that if you have anything that you want for removable storage devices that are being used for authentication, or if you only want to encrypt used space. And to wrap things up, brings us to the tasks menu. The tasks menu are where any patches, any patch rollbacks, any scans are going to be located. As you can see, there was a patch that was pushed out, hasn't been published yet. I can come in, publish it, push it out to my environment, and view past results of rollbacks, of patch installations, so I can see if they're finished, if they're pending, and if they require reboots within the environment. Outside of that, to wrap up the rest of the platform, over here on the right hand side you have access to the Advanced Administration Guide, the Advanced Reporting Tool User Guide, connection to technical support. You can easily call, email technical support, or directly from the console you can actually report individual issues with the machines from the computer's menu. So I come over to the Windows desktop, I click on the three little dots, you can see all the options I have available to me, and I click on report a problem. I need to just give a detailed description. It'll send a log dump of all the detail that our support team needs to then troubleshoot the issue that your computers are experiencing, and then turn around and then provide the solution to you. So it's able to cut down both on your time and on support's time as well. Outside of that, that wraps up the management from a day-to-day perspective of the solution and the core underlying functionality of how Adaptive Defense 360 works within an environment. Again, my name is Wade Appleby. I'm one of the sales engineers with Panda Security. I want to thank you for taking some time to look at the mobile management of the Ether platform from mobile devices and tablet devices as well. I look forward to talking with you in the future, and have a great rest of your day.